Welcome to We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only show dedicated to the process and strategies for transforming apartment buildings to thriving communities. I am your host, John Brackett, and welcome to the show. All right, folks, welcome to another great episode of We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only place where you come to learn how to take apartment buildings and turn them into amazing communities. So I have another great host. His name is David Pere. And David, man, I'm really excited to have him on the show. Military background, so he has the discipline, has built out 60 units, investing in multiple asset classes, hotels, apartment buildings, has experience with residential properties. So this is going to be another great show. And so I want to invite everybody into this conversation by, first of all, talking a little bit about his background, sharing your bio sharing his bio with all of you. So David Pere joined the Marine Corps in August of 2008. Since that time, he's lived in or traveled to many unique places around the world, including a combat tour in Afghanistan. So David got started in real estate investing in 2015. He house hacked a duplex with an FHA loan and lived in it for a little while until getting married to his beautiful wife, Kimberly, and received orders to go to Hawaii. Man, that must have been tough. While stationed in Hawaii, David bought a 10-unit apartment building in Missouri and has had continued success with real estate investing ever since that time. So through these experiences, from military to millionaire was born with the goal, of course, of teaching service members and veterans how to build wealth through real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. Hey, man, welcome. Really excited to get into this. Absolutely love your background. Appreciate you being here. And this is going to be a fun show. So share with us your story, right? Let's start off by sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. This is good. My story is currently one of a little chaos. If you can see out the windows, you might see a cow, or my nephew just rolled up on a four-wheeler moving back to Missouri and trying to unpack the house, which is why I'm sitting in a car, right? But if you back it up, joined the Marine Corps, traveled the world, did a lot of fun stuff. And then in 2015, I had a negative net worth, and a friend tried to get me into Amway, selling drinks and random products and stuff. And in the process, he handed me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was like, I don't really read. And he was like, well, here's a CD. You drive a lot. Listen to it while you drive. Like, okay, fine. He called my bluff. So I listened to it. And then like the stars aligned. Like at that time, I was in the process. My lease was about to be up on my apartment. So I was like, oh, well, I could buy a duplex and I could house hack and live in one unit and rent the other. And so I did that. About a year later, I got orders to Hawaii. And when I moved out and I realized I rented both units, and all of a sudden I was making $300 a month, I was like, there's something to this. This is cool. And then it took me a little while to save up some money and find the right deal. I was looking for more duplexes and stuff. And then I found that 10 unit, ironically, from a letter. I've had some really weird luck with direct mail. So I bought a 10 unit because of a direct mail letter for a duplex. And he called me. He was like, well, I don't want to sell my duplex, but I have this 10 unit I'd be willing to sell you. So I bought it, which is only funny because fast forward until about 3 months ago, in January, this guy called me from a direct mail letter for a single family house and was like, well, I've got 79 doors I'd like to get rid of. It's a hotel, 2 apartments, and sure, I'll throw the house in if you want it. And we've been negotiating forever. And we took over the hotel on a lease option April 5th, and we officially closed it September 5th, just because of some stuff on his end that he had to get sorted out before we could close. And then the 2 apartments we closed 2 weeks ago. So that's 89 doors that I bought direct mailing to single families and duplexes in just 2 deals. So kind of crazy. Then obviously I bought through that. So after the 10 unit, that gap in between those is a bunch of single families, duplexes, smaller properties, some wholesaling, flipped a house in Hawaii, flipped a house in Missouri, lost a lot of money on a flip in Missouri on my own. But I'm traditionally a buy and hold guy.
Okay, awesome, man. So, hey, I really appreciate the background. So the cool thing is you have had the opportunity to dabble in a couple different asset classes, and you're also a marketer, right? I always say, man, at the end of the day, he who markets directly will always win long-term, because there's no dependency on another source for your business, right? I mean, you're really controlling your own destiny, and I love that. I like being in that place. So let's talk a little bit about this. I call it a home run. I'm going to call it a home run, right? Because, one direct mail piece led to, in this particular case, 4 or 5 opportunities, roughly, 89 doors, I believe you said, but ultimately 4 or 5 properties, which is also pretty cool. And it sounds like you had the time, the seller gave you the time to put these structures together that ultimately made sense for the purchase, made sense for the seller, made sense for you guys. You structured it as a lease option, I think, on the hotel, which makes sense because, you're ultimately running a business there, right? And I'm very curious to learn and have you talk us through that deal and how that all came about and how you structured those deals and why.
Yeah. So I want to say he got my letter in January for a single family. I was mailing to 1 to 4 unit absentee homeowners with 70% equity. So for the last 6 months to a year, I've been targeting tired landlords and just trying to buy small portfolios. So we bought a portfolio of 4 homes in November. Got another guy I was working with who had 20 different units or homes. And I've realized that these older retiring landlords were stuck in the middle of COVID, who prices have appreciated a lot, and a lot of them don't really know what their properties are worth. Okay, those are a perfect niche for seller financing, super discounted properties that you can either hold for long-term or relist. And I've had a lot of luck with that. Probably did 7 or 8 deals in that 6 months that was, probably netted $40,000, $50,000 off flipping properties and whatever, that I've just been rolling more into properties. But this guy called in January, and he was basically well, I got your letter, but about my house, but I want to know if you're serious. And just so happened at the time I was under contract to sell my 10 unit, which ended up falling through, and I refinanced it. But then I was well, I've got this sale, and I'm going to 1031 it, and I'm going to have $150,000 that I won't have anything to do with. So yeah, I'm serious, and this is in Missouri. So 79 units in Missouri is more affordable than it is in San Diego.
Sure.
And so we start talking, and he's well, I just want to make sure you're serious because we looked up your stuff online after we talked a few times. He's well, you're young, blah, blah, blah. I was okay, well, it took 3 months to convince this guy, okay, well, my property manager, my buddy Hugh, and my agent are all going to come out there and tour the property, because I was still in San Diego. And yes, we're serious. How do we structure this? And we had to do, so it's kind of weird on the hotel. He bought it last August. And so the reason he can't sell until September is because he doesn't want to pay short-term capital gains. He took it over from bankruptcy because the person before, I don't know what they were doing, but it was run so poorly that when we took it over, there was a phone call at one point saying, hey, do you guys still do a free night stay for 2 hits of heroin? No, that's not how we operate. Sorry, that discount went away.
Let me make sure I heard that correctly. So, did you just say what I thought you said? A free hit of heroin for a 2-night free stay?
No, the other way around. Somebody was offering, hey, I will give you 2 hits of heroin if you give me a free night stay.
Oh man, that's crazy. So it
wasn't worded hey, would you guys do this? It was are you still doing this? So
wow.
So the hotel went bankrupt in late 2019, early 2020. This guy took it over from the bank in August, and he tried to rezone it into assisted living, but it's a small town, 3,300 people, about 30 minutes north of where I normally invest. And the city was that's the only hotel in town. No, you can't rezone it. We need that thing. And so then he's 62 years old, and he's looking to retire and move to Florida. And he was basically I don't want to run a hotel. And then he got my letter, and we just kept going back and forth. And so I was all right, well, we're dead serious. So I kid you not, this is how crazy this thing went. So we're negotiating all of it as a package deal. Okay, we're going to buy your 38 apartment units, 40 hotel units, and your single family home. We go to sign the contract on a Friday, and they're revising everything. And he's hey, you guys take the weekend to think about everything. But I'm really kind of ready to step away from this hotel. If you guys can get me $100,000 on Monday, it's yours. And so Friday we're Oh, he's serious. So we like go through all the documents, and in the lease option, we put a contingency that was like, hey, we want a 14-day refundable window where we can do the inspection and everything else. But yeah, we'll give you the $100,000 on Monday. And so like literally over the course of a weekend, we were like waiting on the bank to open, wrote him a check for $100,000, took over the apartment or the hotel, and crazily enough turned a $20,000 gross profit bump that month from the month prior when he'd been running it. And so I don't know what was going on, but like we took over, and the guy that I had doing operations has a hotel and just started changing a bunch of stuff. And the best month he had since he bought it was I think like $33,000 or $34,000. And from the 5th of April to the 30th, we grossed 54. And so we're like, oh, okay, well, there's only like a 15 or 20,000 net window in there, but I mean, it's pretty lucrative deal for, you put $100,000 down. We could have pulled 15 out this month. And so, so anyway, so that, and then we just bought the 2 apartments 2 weeks ago, and that's an actual, 25-year amortization, 15% down, 4.75 fixed, no balloon loan. So
nice, man. It's from the same seller?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So what was his motivation in wanting to get out? Why did he want to sell?
Yeah. So when he realized that he was going to be stuck running a hotel, and mind you, he was very do things himself. He was physically like living in the hotel to redo the vinyl flooring. When he realized that he wasn't going to be able to turn it over to assisted living, and he was going to have to physically live there or physically take care of this property, he didn't want anything to do with it. His son owns like an Airbnb high-end luxury, like Airbnb rental company, high enough that like they have a mansion in Branson area that I can't think of his name now, but the famous Chiefs quarterback came and stayed at their place last weekend. So like they do very high-end luxury Airbnbs, and his son runs the management company. And so his son was basically like, Dad, instead of stressing out over all these properties and like living in a hotel, why don't you just buy properties with me and I'll manage them? And he wants to move to Florida. So he's like, okay. And we just happened to be there at the right time. So kind of a crazy thing, but it was, 3 months of negotiations and back and forth. And he was on my like automatic drip campaign for a while because he didn't actually respond. He called in off the letter and then I couldn't get a hold of him. So I just put him on a drip. And then like 3 weeks later, he called me again. He's like, what are these automatic text messages I'm getting? And yeah, crazy deal.
Hey, I love it, man. I love it. Hey, well, I really appreciate the story, David. So kind of a cool story, right? Because you start from advertising, then you talk a little bit about marketing and the follow-up and, putting together the deal and how that thing transpired. So when you look back on that experience, if you can point to one thing that you felt created that opportunity, maybe the greatest takeaway there from what you've learned from that, what would that be?
Aside from like the fact that you should just be doing your own marketing, because I never would have had that opportunity if we weren't, I would say it's the follow-up. I mean, we talked for 3 or 4 months before I actually had this thing on an LOI. And a lot of people never happened. And these were like hour-long phone calls 2 or 3 times a week I probably spent 14 or 15 hours on the phone with this guy over the course of a month once we got serious. And most of that was just listening to him telling me his war stories. And, I don't know that, like, there's a lot of people who would just eventually just kind of drop, or it would get lost in the weeds because they don't have the follow-up system to keep tabs on someone like that. So I think for me, it's just remembering to stay in touch with someone and follow through to see like, okay, is this serious, whatever. But then ultimately when the guy says, all right, well, I'm not going to even entertain this if you're not serious. Are you guys willing to do, whatever? I wouldn't necessarily condone that you write someone a check for 6 figures over a weekend when you haven't done due diligence period yet, but you should be willing and able to like know the numbers are right and jump on something that fast. Otherwise, I mean, he told me after the fact that he had 3 or 4 other people that had reached out to him about the hotel. And one of them, I can't remember now, but one of them was a name that like the moment I heard it, I recognized it as someone in the area who raises money and does a lot of big deals. And so he would have easily been able to beat out my price if he had gotten a chance to get in there. So I think it was just moving quick.
Yeah, nice, man. Nice. So what's next with you, right? So you're at this place now where you have, about 89 units. You own these units with partners. Looks like you're looking to move into different markets, or I think you said that you're back into a market that you're familiar with, right? And so now you're looking to expand in that market. So what's next?
Yeah. One thing that I'm looking to do right now is, for the first time in a long time, just relax. I haven't taken a moment off, in years, and I've been grinding out 2 or 3 businesses. So for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've done nothing, and it's been, at first it was super annoying, but now it's been kind of nice. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to be closing on a property that has the upstairs I'm going to Airbnb, and then the downstairs I'm going to live in, and it's big enough that I can kind of use it as an office as well. And so I'm going to be using that. I'll have an office space then. And at that point, the goal is to really focus on the online, like the content, and helping veterans use their VA loan to buy properties that make sense and really get started with building wealth and saving money and, house hacking, whatever. But also in the local market, it's really growing the amount of mailers I'm pushing out and really scaling on the wholesaling side. I really don't actually enjoy wholesaling. What I'm doing is I'm trying to buy as many portfolios of small rental properties as I can. And then everything that I can't buy or that isn't like the perfect fit for me, I'm just wholesaling it to other buyers that will actually do the flip, because I don't want to deal with flips. And so I'm looking to scale that and then take all of that money. And I'm meeting with a couple brokers in town to really sit down and say, hey, look, like, here's a little bit of what we've done. I've been involved in, one syndication for 146 stores. I own 3 apartments. I own a hotel. Like, we're serious. Let me get on your good side. Let me get in there. And then I'm going to physically go to every mobile home park and apartment owner that's like mom and pop owner in town and, hand out business cards and get to know them all. And the goal will eventually be to start buying up my little town.
Nice, man. Nice. And so how many mobile home parks in your town?
There's a decent amount. There's only 1 or 2 that I think are over 100 trailers, or pads, which is kind of what I'm looking for, is like the bigger pads that are a little bit more scalable and attractive to investors. But there's actually quite a few because it's the Midwest and there's a lot of white trash here. So, I mean, that's the stereotype for mobile homes, right? And it sounds crappy to say that, but there's mobile homes all over the place. There's just not always in nice parks.
You're funny. So, all right. So,
it's true. I mean, it is what it is. It wouldn't be a stereotype if it wasn't true. Right?
All right, man, let's shift a little bit. All right. So you brought us up to speed on, your plan while you're there. First of all, congratulations, man, on, this win. Sounds like you guys are generating some really good returns on that portfolio purchase. And you have a plan in place, right, to market directly to a niche that works for you and then continue to trade up. I like that. I've done that in the past, and that's worked really well for me long term. So now let's talk a little bit about strategy. Okay, which you have shared strategy inside of this podcast, especially earlier, but there are a lot of different ways to do this business, right? And I learned that there's no perfect way. There's only the way that actually generates results. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, man, are results, right? So everybody is good at doing something really, really well. What is that for you? What do you do extraordinarily well that you can rely on to generate results?
Ooh, that second part, the rely on to generate results, kind of makes me change my answer a little bit. What I would say is my superpower and what I do really well is networking. I'm really good at networking, getting around people, figuring out what people need, figuring out what opportunities are out there. And then I'm good at picking up on an opportunity that, like, someone might casually be like, oh yeah, I have such and such. And like, that will kind of be it for some people. But like, if someone mentions, a possible opportunity, I'm pretty good at being like, oh, okay, well, I will get back to you tomorrow. Let's talk about that. And then actually doing it, which has opened doors for some of those opportunities. I mean, the 10 unit I bought, the guy basically told me to pound sand on the duplex. I was like, okay, cool. Well, do you have anything else that you'd be willing to sell? And he's like, oh, actually, I've been thinking about selling this 10 unit. So like that side of networking. But I think a lot of that ties in, as you mentioned, the like can rely on to give you results. It's the marketing side. And so like networking done correctly is marketing. They're very similar beasts.
Right.
And I don't think people think of it that way. Like sending out direct mail is definitely not networking, but thinking through the process of like, who do I want to meet next? What kind of person am I looking for to get in front of? And then targeting that with mailers or just being consistent with reaching out to people. Like that all kind of goes hand in hand. And you're not going to be a good marketer if you're not personable enough to actually be able to close the deal. And so luckily I was a recruiter for the Marine Corps for a little while. So I got told to pound sand for 3 years, like, Johnny's not joining the military, go screw yourself, click. So like, I'm pretty good at dealing with all the negative stuff that comes with marketing and getting through to where I'm actually talking to people. So,
I always wondered how most of those conversations went, man. I really did. And I guess you just shed some light on them.
Yeah. Lots of, oh, hey ma'am, is Johnny home? Who's this? Oh, this is Sergeant Pere with the United States Marine Corps. Go fuck yourself.
So why?
And then you're like, call back later. And then you try later.
So, man, really interesting. So you had a sales background, or you have a sales background. You were able to map that over to what you're doing today, right? And so sales and advertising, sales and marketing, you've leveraged that. You've leveraged your background into a strength for yourself to be able to get yourself into more conversations about deals. And that's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's only going to continue to serve you, by the way.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, bud, we are approaching the end of our show. And man, I want to thank you for being on, because we have jammed a ton of content into a very short segment, right? About 30, 35 minutes. But here's why it's been so valuable, David, is it's one thing to talk about deals. It's another to talk about doing deals, but it's something entirely to talk about the little things that generate consistent results, right? And there aren't too many things that I can think of better, man, than being a marketer and a closer. I mean, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, results is really where it is, right? And so you were kind enough to get on the show, man, and share your experiences with how you generate consistent results. And ultimately, your commentary was it's about advertising, marketing, and being a closer. And the way you put it, using your words, I'm going to paraphrase so I don't butcher it exactly, right, is being able to build enough rapport with people where they actually want to continue to have conversations with me, get to know me, and, I can bridge a solution, through those conversations. So, man, I want to thank you for being on. You've been a tremendous guest. Really appreciate you being on, and can't wait to connect when I'm in your neck of the woods. And when you're back out here the next time, you have been my neighbor for a while. We just haven't connected. So the next time you're back out, reach out to me, man.
Yeah, brother. I'll be out there 1 month every year for the next at least 3 years doing training for the reserves. So I'll have to hit you up.
Okay, anytime, brother. And so I'll make sure I send you my contact information. So, hey, what is the one question that you have for me that you think can add some value to our audience, David?
Ooh, man, you know what I always like to ask is like, what's the one book that you've read in the last year that made the most difference for you in your business?
Oh, that's a good one, man. I read a lot. I've been on kind of a reading
Most
hiatus.
Successful people do.
But here's what I can tell you is, give me a second. I'll pull up my phone because I have a library on my phone of books that I read. Right now I'm reading something that my daughter recommended, which I don't like the book at all. So I'm not even going to mention it to you, but give me a second here. Okay. It should only take me a couple seconds. Okay. Phone's charging up. I had to turn it off for you. I'll pull up my library, man. And I'll give you a couple. How's that? I'll give you the last couple that I've read. But what makes you ask that question while I'm pulling this up? Because that's a great question. And I've been asked that a couple times, but just give me some context behind the question. I think it's a pretty cool question.
Okay. So I have realized in life that anyone who's been successful on some level consistently, not just one lucky stroke, is usually a reader, right? Or they try to invest in their own education. And I made a fatal mistake about 4 years ago that I've kicked myself for ever since. When I was in Hawaii, President Obama used to come and work out at the gym whenever he was in Hawaii. And one day I'm literally running on the treadmill next to the president. And we had a very short conversation, like Merry Christmas, how are you, blah, 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 blah. Like kind of awkward for me because, he's the president and I'm in the military. So you have to, and they that's a whole crazy story about like getting kicked out of the gym for Secret Service dogs. And then like, once you're in the gym and he shows up, like you weren't allowed to leave. So then I'm like, I'll just go to the treadmill because I can't leave and I've already done my workout. And then I end up like jogging on the treadmill and I'm like,
That's
whatever.
So cool, man. That's cool.
And I have kicked myself so hard ever since then because I didn't ask him to name like 2 or 3 books or things that got him to where he is now. Because I wasn't his biggest fan, like wasn't necessarily someone that I voted for. I didn't dislike him at all, but like because of that, I didn't like go out of my way to ask the question because I was like, whatever. And like, I just kicked myself so hard ever since then because it's like, man, no matter whether you like the guy or voted for the guy, if he became the president of the United States, like he knows some stuff. You should have asked him that question.
Yeah. 100%.
So now I'm like, okay, anytime I have a question, I'm asking like, what's the thing that you learned or the book that you read that I need to learn or read right now to help me in life? So maybe one day I'll run into him again. I'll be like, oh, what's up, Barack?
Yeah, man. Hey, well, I really appreciate the question. So let me, first of all, I am just a ferocious learner, right? I just love to learn and I'm always finding things to absorb and learn. And sometimes that'll shift month to month, but once I get something in my mind that I want to learn or that is of interest to me, I do. So let me start off with this. Oh, the book that I'm reading now, it's called The Power of Now. I don't like that book, so I'm going to move past it. But my last
I'm familiar with that book, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, my last couple, Gates of Fire. So you might be familiar with that.
Yep.
Okay, now that's fiction.
That's actually Marine Corps reading list.
Yeah. Coach Wooden's, Pyramid for Success. I picked that one up recently. I like that. The War of Art. Oh, this is a really good one. Who Not How. That's a really good one.
I just hired my first executive assistant after reading that book.
Yeah. So I like it because it's just it's very applicable, right? I mean, it's real world stuff that, I'm all about finding things that I can apply. And that one I think is really good. I read Frederick Douglass's biography, always been curious about that. So I did that. The Champion's Mind was a really good one too. I like that one for a couple things that I'm doing with my daughter. Transfluence, not very good. Hey, Black Site, that's another one on your list.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, that one's a good one too. Oh man, this is a great one. For our business, the mission, the men. Oh shoot.
Blackstone Audio presents The Mission, the Men, and Me.
That's it. The Mission, the Men.
There you go. The Mission, the Men, and Me.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
So that's a great book. I actually purchased the audiobook for that. It was so good. So when I was driving around, man, I go, man, I gotta finish this thing. But that book is a fantastic book. That would probably be between that one and Who Not How would be my 2 of the last, I think I read off 10 or 12 books.
Yeah.
Of those last 10 or 12 books that I've been able to take information out of that and apply to my own business, my own life. So there you go, man.
That's awesome.
Well, hey, brother, I appreciate you, man. How do people find you? How do people find you out there?
They just Google military millionaire and my stuff should pop right up.
I love it. But
well, yeah, from military to millionaire.com.
Success. Thanks again for being on, man. You've been a tremendous guest. Really appreciate you. And, can't wait to when you're back in town so we can connect.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Anytime, man. Thank you. Clarity of purpose creates our greatest competitive advantage. When we transform apartment buildings to thriving communities, we improve how people live and create assets with high profit margins. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this up with a friend. I'm John Brackett, bringing you things you can implement right away.